The views, opinions and information expressed during Youth Services podcast series are solely those of individuals involved. Any recommendations or advice during the podcast is general in nature and does not replace the need to seek professional advice. If you are in need of urgent assistance, please call 000 or the Kids Helpline on 1800 55 1800.
The City of Casey proudly acknowledges the traditional owners, Casey's Aboriginal communities and their rich culture, and pays respect to their elders past, present and emerging. We acknowledge Aboriginal people as Australia's first peoples and the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we work and live. I would also like to invite everyone to listen to this podcast. We provide an inclusive space for all young people in our community. Welcome back to our Casey Youth Services podcast. I'm Ellie and I'm a youth worker for the City of Casey. And I'm excited to have Mark, the City of Casey's very own sustainability and emissions guru. To give the listeners a little bit more of an insight to who you are, Mark, what is your favourite pastime hobby?
Wow. Hi, Ellie. My favourite pastime hobby would be surfing.
Yep.
I love surfing, and from a very young age I was fishing as well. So I guess, I've always sort of had an affinity for being in the natural elements, particularly water. So forests, ocean, rivers, anything along those lines I'm pretty happy with. But surfing is my number one pastime.
Amazing. And do you have a favourite spot along the coastline that you like to surf the most?
Well, I'm based down in the Mornington Peninsula, so I surf all of the surf breaks around the area in Western Port Bay and down the back beaches at Cunnamulla. But generally speaking, if I can get a trip anywhere else overseas or up the east coast of Australia, that's certainly, anywhere really. The local breaks most of the time, they keep me occupied. Yeah,
cool. I've heard Cunnamulla is quite scary, to be honest. Is it as scary as people say?
Is it scary? I've rescued a couple of people there, including my daughter. It can have its moments, and if you're not a strong swimmer, it's not the place to go for sure.
Good to know. So I previously met with Sarah and Harleen from the YAC committee to discuss the area of climate change, and they were so helpful, but we wanted to get a different perspective about what you do and just some advice you may have for our young people and their families. So I guess, are you able to give the listeners just a quick overview of your experience and your role at the City of Casey? I know that you've done a lot, but just some main points so that they get to know a little bit more about your role.
Okay, well, brief history. I've been working in the environmental industry for the last 25 years. That started off in a couple of different voluntary roles. I started the environmental collective for Deakin University. Followed that up working for Wainwright's Tree, which was the Geelong Environmental Resource Centre. Following that, I started my own business, which was mainly focused around water management and also energy efficiency as well. Then I worked for Clean Ocean Foundation for 5 years as the environmental scientist, and then the carbon manager for Carbonetics, and then I've been with Casey for the last 7 years. So, big career.
You're Casey, a wealth of knowledge.
I'm a wealth of knowledge, yes. So my role is Climate Change and Emissions Officer. And so my role is largely focused around reducing emissions for council, though that is broadening out to look at community emissions as well. And so emissions reduction, I suppose, is really focused around improving energy efficiencies in buildings, energy efficiencies in cars. So trying to transition to electric vehicles, and investing in renewable energy as well is a large focus. So that's including rooftop solar on buildings, but also, we're doing a feasibility study at the moment looking at a solar farm so we can source all our electricity for our buildings from that farm based in Cranbourne. So there's a bit of work being done there.
That's really interesting. And for those who are wondering what that is, I believe it would be, so that solar energy would be coming from the sun, correct? And then it would be sourcing the electricity in the building, so lights and plugs and things like that?
Yeah, that's correct. So the solar system stores the energy from the sun that goes into the grid, into the transition lines, and then that basically offsets our electricity. So we essentially buy electricity from the national electricity market, and that's equivalent to what we're using in our buildings. Yeah, essentially you're buying renewable energy created from the sun for running your buildings.
That's really cool and amazing that we can actually do that. I guess my next question is, was there anything in particular that sparked your interest and passions towards the environment, or is it something that you just kind of stumbled across? And have you always been interested in the environment or helping the climate?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I've always had a love of being in the environment, and I've found a lot of peace being in the environment as well. So yeah, fishing and surfing has been a big part of my life. I suppose what sort of happened in my late teens, I was always sort of aware of the fact that there were, we had environmental degradation happening globally, and also aware of various pollution sources that were affecting some of the environments that I like to spend time in. So I was kind of aware that there was some environmental issues going on, but I did feel quite disempowered by that.
Yeah.
So I felt a fair bit of pain, I suppose, going into my early 20s, knowing that and not sort of feeling like I could have an impact on changing that. And I suppose, and then in my early 20s, I just remember, one day really just deciding that it was up to me to, have a go and to start getting into creating the world I wanted to create. And so that meant starting to be a lot more environmental in the way I live my own life. And then I guess it's just sort of, my career and my life is sort of just grown from there. But started off with myself in, growing my own food for myself, and then encouraging others to do that, to be more energy efficient, water efficient with materials as well. And I've just carried that on throughout my career and never really looked back. I, find it a lot easier sort of waking up in the morning knowing that I'm giving it my best go.
And I guess that's really special as well. And rather than focusing on everybody around you, it's starting with yourself and the things that you can change that you'll feel better about and that will help. And then I guess people seeing you make those changes, they'll be like, oh, yeah, I want to help too. Mark's doing this really well. Maybe I could do this as well. Right? Because I think people get overwhelmed with the whole issue, obviously, with the environment and climate change. So focusing on what you can do rather than focusing on others, I think is super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we all want to be, changing the world at that sort of, the very highest Greta Thunberg's sort of level. But, I mean, there's a number of steps you need to take to get there. And I think really just, taking those small steps is really, really important. And, that really starts with just taking responsibility for yourself for the decisions you make, whether that's buying product, if you buy something from the shops, think about the waste that you're producing or the waste that's contributing to that. So looking at packaging, and that might mean you leave the packaging at the store and say, here's your packaging, this is your responsibility to deal with. Alternatively, just getting in the garden, growing your own vegetables is really, really important, because it's, you're growing your own food, so it's nice and fresh and healthy and potentially organic as well. And all the, you're basically reducing all the emissions associated with buying those foods from the supermarket. So, there's a lot of transport involved in getting vegetables to the shops. There's a lot of fertilizers. There's a lot of farming practices as well. So there's a lot of emissions associated with foods. And so if you can localize your food production at home, you'll get better food. And it's a wonderful way to sort of live life, looking after your garden and eating from it.
Exactly, and I think that's something we can really implement in the youth centres as well. Narre Warren, we've got such a big garden space. I think if we made our own veggie garden and the young people can kind of work on that, it would be such a great experience for them to learn from there, if it's not possible at home.
Yeah, that's right. So, community gardens are fantastic. Great place to meet, to share ideas, share techniques on how to grow different plants, vegetables, and seed saving as well. So you can actually save the seed from your plants, and you can share those with each other as well, and that just keeps those strains of the plants continuing on. It's a great space, and yeah, I mean, not everyone has, the right garden space to do that, and it makes it pretty difficult. And certainly, renting in some cases can make it difficult. But even just getting some plant pots, you can easily grow silver beet in plant pots and tomatoes, and that can really, it's just a wonderful way of living, I think, growing your own vegetables like that.
Although I did try and do some sprouting the other week. I tried to sprout my own sprouts, obviously, in a mason jar. It didn't go so well. It was about into day 3. I must have put it in the sun for too long, or I don't know what's happened, but it started to grow mould.
Wow.
And I was so upset because I really wanted it to work, because I know how good they are for you. So I definitely think I need a lesson in how to sprout my own broccoli sprouts.
Yeah. Yeah, you could really do with a community garden then, sharing that information. Exactly. I'm sorry I can't help you on that. I'm not a big sprouter myself.
That's okay. Maybe you could help me with the vegetable garden, or you could come into the youth centre and help the young people. I think that would be really cool.
I would definitely do that. I love it. I really love gardening, and I spent a couple of hours even last night just in the garden and just putting some tomatoes in and looking after the potatoes. So, yep, I'd be very happy to help anyone that is interested in moving in this space.
Amazing. We'll hold you to that one. Perfect. So you had explained a little bit of the things that the City of Casey obviously are doing to help the environment and help reducing climate change impacts in regards to the wind farm and the solar energy. Are there anything that is kind of more small changes, for example, with the bins, or anything to do with recycling or anything like that you know of that the City of Casey are doing?
Yeah. Do you mean in terms of Casey doing it, or do you mean in terms of people, what people can do themselves?
I guess we could kind of talk about what Casey offers for the for people that can do in the community.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So Casey residents can sign up to the Green Living in Casey newsletter.
Okay.
That's probably a good starting point. So that'll update you with any events, news or ideas relating to sustainability. That can certainly help, and that covers a broad range of different areas. Beyond that, the Sustainability Victoria website provides a lot of information as well. So I suppose specifically for schools, the Resource Smart program is a program that's been running for the last sort of 10, 15 years, and that's a great program for schools addressing energy efficiency, water efficiency, and reducing their waste. But beyond that, that website can help with reducing or supporting people to grow their own vegetables, looking at improving recycling and even composting and stuff like that.
It's really cool. What I'll do is I'll pop those links in the description box underneath the podcast. So if anyone wants to get more information, you can click on that and they can go to there for those resources.
Good one.
Perfect. And I guess that kind of rolls us into our last question about recommendations for schools or young people that can do to start making change. But I feel like we've already touched on that in regards to using less plastic, creating your own veggie garden. A big thing for me, I know I mentioned this in the last podcast, but was to have your own drink bottle rather than buying water bottles from the supermarket and just reusing your drink bottles. Is there anything that schools or young people can do at school? Do you think maybe obviously making their lunch at home, or maybe schools could hold a plastic-free breakfast or something like that, or lunches to show them what they can do?
Yeah. As I sort of touched on before, the Resource Smart program can sort of support a lot of those initiatives. And I think the thing about that program in particular, it sets a path in various areas to change the school and to get everyone working or excelling in each of those areas, whether it's energy, water or waste. But yes, look, as I said before, if you can take responsibility for yourself, it's really, really important. Any opportunities of reusing plastic bottles for water or coffee or a hot chocolate or something, use a keep cup, a cup where you can reuse it every time. Yeah, all of those things really, really help. I mean, the amount of material or waste created from each of those events of buying those drinks or buying products from shops, it all contributes to pollution and climate change impacts as well. So it's up to the individual to decide and determine how much of an impact they want to have and how little an impact they have. And certainly over the course of my life, I've had times when I've been, I just would not buy anything from shops and would be eating everything out of the garden. And then other times I've been a little bit more flexible around the way I've lived as well. So, but that's a decision, everyone should make. But beyond that, driving cars, if you can reduce the amount you're driving your car, that helps. Try to ride a bike a bit more. It obviously gets you fit, as well as reducing emissions associated with a car. Walking, it's obviously, really healthy thing to do.
Public transport, if things are a bit too far to bike or you don't have a bike.
Yep. So it's just, I suppose, just looking at all those, all the waste you produce, so you can look at the rubbish you have and look through it and say, okay, what can I do with this? What's the alternative to this actually going to landfill? It might be, okay, we're going to start diverting more of it to recycling because we're not, there's recyclables going into waste. Might be that you start to pull, food waste out and compost that or turn it into a worm farm, which you can then use on your vegetable garden. So it's really trying to holistically look at all of the impacts you're having on the environment and then just reassessing how you can do things the best way you can.
Exactly. And even buying pasta, you could make your own pasta out of dough and water, I think. It's so easy to make. And it's kind of a fun activity that you can do as well with your family or your friends. That way you can reduce that.
Yeah. We've made a lot of sourdough recently.
Oh, yum.
So beautiful sourdough bread, and not buying that bread is reducing emissions associated with transport, and they're a lot better loaves as well. So, there's a number of things you can do, But starting in your garden's a good place, and it's a nice life when you can take responsibility for yourself. And I think you sort of get to a point at some stage where you think, okay, well, I'm going to share this information because I think, the way I'm living is worth sharing with others. And I've certainly found that some people have really, really enjoyed doing those same sort of things.
Exactly. So what I will do in the description box below, I will pop some tips in there so that young people can kind of read off there. And if you want to help out, or if you're confused, or if there's a lot of information in this podcast, you can look back to that list and see what we can do. And I'm sure we can answer any questions that you may have. So we cannot thank you enough for being a part of this. And anyone in the City of Casey community, if you have any questions, please let us know, as I mentioned before. And I'm sure Mark will be happy to help. And hopefully we can get that community garden going. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and check out our social media platforms in the description box below. And I thank you so much for being on this podcast, Mark. You've been amazing and really, really helpful.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, Ellie. Good luck to everyone going forward, and do your best with your own life, and we'll have a better world, I'm sure of it.
We will. Have a good day, everyone, and be safe.